I'll never forget the afternoon when Lisa Harper, the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood's Homeowners Association, finally crossed a line she couldn't uncross. It was a warm Saturday, and I was out in my front yard, tweaking the sprinkler system to keep my lawn green without wasting water. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, shrill enough to make my skin crawl. "Help! 911! He's after me! He's threatening me!" I froze, the wrench still in my hand, instantly recognizing that voice. It was Lisa, the woman who'd been making my life a living nightmare ever since I moved into Pinecrest Grove 3 months ago. I'd barely had time to process her words when the wail of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Before I could blink, 3 police cruisers screeched to a stop in front of my house, and officers spilled out, hands hovering over their holsters. "Sir, drop the tool and step back," one of them barked, eyeing the wrench like it was a loaded gun. My heart pounded as I carefully set it down and raised my hands, confusion mixing with a sinking dread. Across the street, Lisa stood in her perfectly manicured garden, pointing at me with a trembling finger, her face twisted in what looked like terror. "That's him!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with theatrical panic. "He was coming at me with that weapon!" The officers closed in, their eyes sharp and wary, and I could feel my pulse hammering in my throat. I'd done nothing wrong, just adjusting sprinklers on my own property. How had it come to this? "Officer," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "I've been working on my yard all day. I haven't gone near her." But the skepticism in their eyes was all too familiar, the kind I'd seen before as a black man accused by a white woman in a pristine suburb. I braced myself for what might come next. Then, like a gift from above, Mrs. Alvarez, my next-door neighbor, stepped out of her house, smartphone in hand. "Officers, I saw everything from my window," she said, her voice firm and unyielding. "This man never left his yard. I started recording when I saw Lisa march over to harass him again." The air grew thick with tension as the officers crowded around her phone, their faces shifting from concern to confusion, then to something like irritation. Lisa must have sensed the tide turning because she doubled down, her voice climbing higher. "He threatened me. Check the HOA rules. He's breaking at least 3 landscaping codes," she insisted, flailing her arms for effect. My trouble with Lisa started the day I moved in. As the HOA president, she wielded her authority like a sledgehammer, obsessed with enforcing every rule in the 50-page handbook. Within my first week, I found a violation notice taped to my door because my MOVYing boxes were viewable through my garage window. 3 days later, another notice arrived at me. Grass was a 1/4 inch too long while I was away on a business trip. By week 3, Lisa was out there with a measuring tape, informing me my new rose bushes were 2 inches beyond the acceptable garden boundary, per some obscure clause. I tried to play nice. I went to the HOA meetings, smiled through her lectures, and tweaked my renovation plans to fit the neighborhood's aesthetic. But nothing satisfied her. The more I complied, the pettier her complaints became. It wasn't just me. Neighbors whispered about Lisa's reign of terror, but most were too scared to push back. Her husband was a big-shot lawyer in town, and she loved dropping hints about legal consequences for rule breakers. Things got worse when I decided to install drought-resistant landscaping in my front yard. I'd gotten approval from the HOA's architectural committee, but Lisa claimed the shade of my decorative rocks clashed with the neighborhood's harmony. When I showed her the approval papers, she stormed off, muttering about incompetent committees. The next day, she was snapping photos of my yard from every angle. The day after that, she parked across the street, watching me like a hawk as I mowed the lawn. When I waved, she sped off. Then the anonymous complaints started. Neighbors got reports about my late-night activities, even though I'm in bed by 10. My trash cans were mysteriously moved, earning me more citations. Once, I came home to a violation notice for an unauthorized vehicle, because my cousin parked his work truck in my driveway for an hour. The pattern was clear, but without proof, I was stuck appealing her nonsense at HOA meetings. The breaking point came at a heated HOA meeting where I called out her selective rule enforcement. A few neighbors, emboldened, shared their own stories of Lisa's bullying. Her face turned crimson as the room turned against her, and she slammed the gavel, ending the meeting 15 minutes early, claiming time constraints. I knew then I'd become her main target. The next morning, she was outside my house at 7 a.m., measuring my new mailbox with a level and a tape measure. That's when I started documenting everything: security cameras, detailed notes, and my phone's camera ready whenever I stepped outside. Some neighbors followed suit, and a quiet rebellion began to simmer in Pinecrest Grove. Mrs. Alvarez brought me cookies and tipped me off when Lisa was prowling. Mr. Thompson, from across the street, shared his own dossier of Lisa's antics going back 3 years. That fateful afternoon, I was just adjusting my sprinklers fully compliant with HOA rules when I noticed Lisa watching from her window, phone in hand. When she marched across the street, I propped my phone on my toolbox, recording. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "Those sprinkler heads are non-regulation. The HOA only allows Rainbird Pro Series in brass." I took a deep breath. "Actually, Lisa, these are the exact model listed in the HOA's landscaping guide. I can grab the paperwork if you want." Her face twisted like I'd insulted her. "Don't use that tone with me. I know those rules inside out, and you're in violation. This is your last warning before fines and liens." I kept my cool, though I was boiling inside. "Lisa, I've followed every rule. The committee approved all my changes. What more do you want?" She stepped closer, jabbing a finger toward me. "What I want is for you people to respect the standards of this community, standards that were here long before you showed up." There it was, the ugly truth I'd suspected all along, barely veiled. My stomach tightened, but I stayed calm. "I understand the standards, Lisa. I also understand harassment and discrimination. Unless you've got a specific violation to cite, I'm going back to my work." I turned to my sprinklers, ignoring her. For a moment, there was silence. Then, out of nowhere, Lisa gasped, spun around, and sprinted toward her house, phone to her ear. 911! Help! He's threatening me! He's after me with a weapon!" she screamed, loud enough for the whole block to hear. I stood there, stunned, wrench in hand, as neighbors peeked out their windows. Mrs. Alvarez was already recording, and Mr. Thompson rushed out with his tablet. By the time the police arrived, at least 5 neighbors were filming. The officers reviewed Mrs. Alvarez's footage, then more videos from other neighbors. The evidence was undeniable. Lisa had stormed onto my property, picked a fight, thrown a racist jab, and lied to 911 when I wouldn't back down. The lead officer, a no-nonsense woman, turned to Lisa, her face like stone. "Ma'am, we need to talk about that call." Lisa's performance hit fever pitch. "He threatened me. I feared for my life. That tool was a weapon." The officer raised a hand. "Ma'am, we've seen multiple videos. You approached him, started the argument, and made a false emergency call." Lisa's face went pale. "Those videos are edited. I know my rights," she sputtered, but no one was buying it. "Turn around and place your hands behind your back," the officer said calmly. Lisa's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." But the officer was dead serious. "Lisa Harper, you're under arrest for filing a false police report, misuse of emergency services, and making a false statement to an officer." The neighborhood went silent as Lisa was cuffed, her shouts of, "My husband's a lawyer," echoing as they led her to the cruiser. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom as the judge laid out Lisa's fate. The prosecution had a mountain of evidence, not just the videos, but a history of her harassing neighbors. Her lawyer, not her husband, who was nowhere to be seen, tried to claim she genuinely felt threatened, but the videos told a different story. "Mrs. Harper," the judge said, peering over his glasses, "false reports waste resources and endanger lives. You're guilty on all charges." Lisa gasped as he sentenced her to 6 months probation, A due law 5,000 fine, due law 3,700 in court and response fees, and 200 hours of community service at the County Crisis Center. A restraining order barred her from coming near me, and her HOA crown was as good as gone. As I left the courthouse, my phone buzzed with emails from the HOA board. An emergency meeting was set to address leadership concerns, and the VYC president asked if I'd run for president in the upcoming election. I couldn't help but smile as I glanced back at Lisa, her empire in ruins, her supporters dwindling. She tried to break me, but in the end, she'd broken herself.